Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today I got a super interesting topic. I'm back in Vegas and today we're going to talk about why Florida's going to be one of the most expensive states to live in, and some of it's from my experience, some of it's backed up by data, and I got some cool stuff showing and got some cool data to back all this stuff up. So let's jump into the video. Well, we know now that Florida is a super desirable state for people to live in. People move from New Jersey, Florida, California to Florida, and I get why. It's the sunshine state. It is one of the most beautiful states ever. I love it. My family has history down there. I love that state. But it's now starting to get really, really sour. What do I mean by that? Well, so we now know that homeowners insurance and property insurance skyrocketed. So I've seen on the news this guy who used to pay $3,000-$4,000 a year in homeowners insurance, and all of a sudden they got renewed this year and it's $15,000. And he said he cannot afford it, and they're actually thinking about moving out of state because they can't afford it. And a saying is, paradise always costs money. So I personally think that when insurance on home values and property insurance is going up that much, it's crazy. So what do we got? We got homeowners insurance on the rise. Interest rates for new homes are on the rise. Gas is expensive. Salaries have not gone up. And now, to top all that, Florida car insurance is also skyrocketing and is 60% more expensive than last year. So what was crazy was when I was in Florida, and I can actually talk about it because I've experienced in it. So I had a local agent from Geico, and everything was really cheap, the insurance, until it came to uninsured motorist. So for 6 months premium, I think that paid $1,000 in uninsured motorist coverage, and the liability and comprehensive and all that was like a few $100. And so I asked the guy, hey, why am I paying so much in uninsured motorist? And he's like, oh yeah, Florida has one of the most uninsured cars in the nation, and every third or every fourth accident, according to him, was an uninsured motorist. So I'm like, what? That is crazy. So you pay actually to have uninsured motorist coverage. What, by the way, is illegal. So it's illegal to not have insurance, but you need to have insurance in case somebody doesn't have insurance. So that's crazy, right? Let me know in the comments if you think that that's right or not. So then what he also said is that fraud is a huge factor in Florida for car insurance. There's a huge fraud going on with damages and whatnot. So that's another thing. So now all of a sudden we're in housing is expensive, cars are expensive, gas isn't too expensive yet, but that can change. And we also now have with homeowners insurance, property value, it's just going to be super unaffordable. Because when I'm starting to look at what's going on, you know, people are saying, oh, I'm moving to Florida for a better life, I'm moving to live cheaper. Nah, those days are gone, my friends. You're not going to move to Florida to live cheaply or live more inexpensively. So if you're moving from California, you're gonna have a huge awakening, and you're basically gonna pay the same amount in Florida as you are in California. Yes, there's less laws. Yeah, you're a little bit more free, but you're paying for it. Because one of the huge things that Florida doesn't have is high salaries and high wages. Yes, Miami wages are getting up there, in Orlando, kinda, but these small little towns outside, like San Augustine and Cape Coral, Naples, they're retiree communities. And those communities are in big trouble because these people are on a fixed income. So one thing that's really nice when you're moving to Florida and you're young, you can basically switch trades, do whatever it takes, and move to another city or do whatever. But when you're a retiree, when you're retired and you're trying to find a place to live and you want to live in the villages or something else, and now you're starting to figure out, holy macron, they jacked up everything. They jacked up car insurance, they jacked up homeowners insurance. They basically made it for me to actually, if I want to still live in Florida, and here it comes, I gotta find a job. So it's gonna suck when you're looking at these people in Florida that are gonna have to get a job because it's so expensive. And 2 years ago, you didn't have any of those problems. 3 years ago, you didn't have any of these problems. Now you do. And to top it all off, Miami is, if you live in the Miami area, they're on a septic system. So when you're on a septic system and you're living in Miami, you're in trouble too, because the leach field and the rising sea levels is basically making the feces go into the ocean, just going into the mangroves, just going out, and that creates septic tank problems. And I remember that in Florida, we had, when I was living there, Miami had huge problem with high water rises. So when the tide rose, storm drains wouldn't clog. And I have a picture right here, and they invented it's like a one-way valve system where when there's high tide or a storm coming, that the water can only go one way and not come back. Because when you look at Florida storm drains and just drains in general, they just go into lakes, ponds, and overflow fields. But that's not the case anymore with the rising sea levels, right? So if me and Allison would have moved to Florida, we'd be in a huge awakening, because it'd be so expensive now that me and her could have not afforded to stay there anymore. So I looked at a house. So me and Allison bought around almost $1 million house, and in Florida that would be ruining us right now, because if property insurance and all that car insurance goes up that much, we would have, all our investments that we're making, that seed money that we use to invest in businesses, dividend stocks, and all this other stuff, would be taken away. So we'd be basically living paycheck to paycheck, and that is just not what I want to do. And I know that Florida is one of the most beautiful states ever, and my heart still is somewhat in Florida, and I would go back. But right now, with the current conditions and people actually leaving the state because they can't pay it, is not obtainable. And I'm cautioning you, if you're thinking about the move, to check out into the future. So I know that's kind of hard to do, but when you're going to make a move and you're going to move your family, you uproot your family, and yes, today you might be able to afford Florida, tomorrow, but then in a few days you might not be able to. And especially when you're retired, because there's a bunch of retirement communities, you cannot afford it. So what do you do? I've been thinking about that lately. What do you do if you'd move to Florida when it was kind of cheap and you bought a house and you're on a fixed income, and all of a sudden everything goes up so much? Do you move and leave? I would actually rent something and just leave. But you have family, you have friends, and you have all this other stuff going on, so you don't want to do that. But the cost of living now is so crazy that people need to be aware of what's going on, of what the dark side of Florida is. And yeah, I mean, for me to move back to Florida, is going to be not existent anymore. That dream kind of imploded, and I'm super sad about that because it's such a beautiful, beautiful state, and there's so much cool stuff to do. But when it's that expensive and you're not making that much, because I think Florida has one of the lowest wages in the whole. I think there's a few more states that have lower wages, but Florida's definitely on the bottom. So I will fact check when I get home, and I'll put it up here what Florida is. And yeah, I just think it's freaking crazy that when you jack everything up, and this is not done in your control. So when you buy a house and you lock in a 30% mortgage, you're good to go for 30 years. Your mortgage, unless you refi, won't change. So you can live in your house for 30 years and not worry about it too much because your price is fixed. But all of a sudden, now with insurance and all that stuff going up that's out of your control and renews every year is unattainable, and I get it. And I think it's really shitty from the insurance companies, from these people, that when you have a 20-year-old roof and the hurricane comes by, or 10-year-old roof, and wipes off the roof, and insurance needs to put up a brand new roof. So what do you do? Well, for me and Allison, we never take out, unless it's something really big, we hardly ever file an insurance claim against our insurance. Car insurance, homeowners insurance, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it, because all of a sudden you're uninsurable. And when you're uninsurable, this is going to cost you so much money. And when you're going to buy a house, and that is a bunch of y'all on YouTube's favorite thing to talk about, is that, oh, you need to be a homeowner, you're going to be paying. And unfortunately, it's not in your control. So there's stuff that's in your control, like how much you make, not how much gas is, but how much you're going to put down, how much you have saved up. That's all in your control. But what's not in your control is disasters. So natural disasters like hurricanes. And we do know Florida is one of the hardest hit states for natural disasters with hurricanes. So now, all of a sudden, we are going to have this coming up, and even more, and getting worse and getting worse. And so what do? Well, this is why I'm in Las Vegas. This is exactly the place why I'm in Las Vegas. It's great to be in a city that has a bunch of sunlight. It's warm. There's not a bunch of natural disasters. Yes, there's a little flooding down the strip, but Las Vegas kind of sits in a valley, and the strip is like on below. So you're really not going to get too much flooding if you buy a little bit outside the strip. And property insurance is really cheap here, and so is car insurance. Car registration, though, is on the more expensive side. So, but there's no state income tax. So it makes it really, really nice to be living in Las Vegas. And I personally think, my prediction is that people in the next 5 to 10 years are going to move more to Las Vegas, to a city like that, than in Florida. Yes, we don't have the water, but we have we're not on the ocean, but we have Lake Mead. You can still boat, go on the water. Or we have Lake Las Vegas, tiny little lake. But it's affordable. And the cost of living is lower, and you can retire here more easily, because the control you have over your finances is more than what you'd have when you move to Florida. So unless there's going to be huge earthquakes, we don't have hurricanes, and we don't really have too many floodings, you're kind of good when it comes to living in Las Vegas. So for us, Allison did not want to move to Florida, but I did. And so we've made the decision to actually move to Las Vegas, because the houses are big. There's 0.5% of property taxes. The property taxes are really cheap. On my $1 million house, I pay like $4,000 a year in property taxes. So to comparison, the house I sold in Soquel, Lindsay Lane, right here, that house has that was assessed before I left at $8,300 and something in property taxes. So that is really, really high. And here I bought a house double the value for half the property taxes. So that is all money I'm reinvesting, I'm doing stuff with, and I calculated it out with $150,000 more in mortgage, because we put like $100 down in Lindsay, and our mortgage was like $400 or $300, and here I have a $500,000 mortgage. The difference in savings from housing wise from California, SoCal, to Las Vegas is about $700. So I'm saving about $700 a month with the fixed housing costs. Yes, I have a pool that costs me chlorine and whatnot, and didn't have that, but those are not every month, and I do it myself, so it's not that much more expensive than it was over there. So now, when you're thinking about, oh, I'm gonna leave LA and I'm gonna move to Florida, and you're a renter, your landlord's gonna kick the rent up. And I've been reading this all over, that Florida and that homeowners that are renting out are jacking up the rents to cope with insurance and all that other stuff, and they need to pass it on, because as a landlord you need to run a profit, because if air conditioning breaks, if something else goes wrong, you need to be covered. And you are very, very much so in a dilemma as a landlord when you try to give breaks and be like, I can just do it at cost, because if property values goes down, you basically paid your tenant to live there. So would I invest in Florida? I think that train has passed. I think there's still good opportunities there, but I think over the next 5 years we're gonna have to see how to monitor the storms, the insurance crisis. But I think that it's gonna be coming down hard on most people. And when we're talking about coming down hard with living in Florida, it's just so sad when one of the most protected population, like the retirees that worked their whole life to give to this country, are going to be kicked out of their homes and are going to get evicted because they can't pay all these bills. Because if property insurance goes up from $4,000 to $15,000, where's that going to come from? That's going to come from your investments, from your savings, or you need to get another job. And there's 80-year-old people that can't get another job. They just have pain, they have medical stuff going on, they're just tired. And I don't think an 80-something-year-old should go out and work and do things that they did basically for 60 years. I think they should be entitled to a break if they handle their finances right. And I don't think that that's something that a lot of people know when they're like, yep, I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna leave. So when you're looking at leaving a state and moving to another one, there's always an unknown factor. So for me and Allison, when we left, there was either Arizona, Las Vegas in the running, Texas, and Florida. And man, I wanted to move to Florida. It was like one of my top ones. But it just wasn't doable financially because the house prices are high. I would have gotten a smaller house, less new, for more money, higher property taxes, higher insurance, and it would have not been worth the hassle. And now I'm making this video talking about how sad I am that everything went up and how people are going to get kicked out of their houses and going to have to find alternative solutions with people that are on fixed incomes. And now I'm like, holy shit, we're going to be in big trouble with that state. And I don't know how much the great governor of Florida can do about this whole situation. It's going to be really interesting to see what the future brings. If you think otherwise, let me know in the comments below. But I also read about that citizen insurance or whatever it's called. It's like the last resort. So this guy for the citizen insurance policies. That's where homeowners insurance and whatnot, that's like the last resort. These people actually send in their check and they cashed it 1 day late and they kicked them off. There's a Google review on it saying that he got kicked off of the insurance because his check was 1 day late. Now take this is not this isn't fact checked, this is just a Google review. So we didn't call the insurance company and says, hey, did you kick this guy off because his check was 1 day late? It might have been late a week or a month, I don't know. But seems to me like insurance companies take every opportunity that they have to kick you off insurance so they don't have to pay up. And Florida's now a high risk state, so I get why they're doing that. And I am interested to see, and your opinions below, to see where we're gonna go with this, because there are so many people living there that are gonna be in trouble. Who's gonna step in and save the day? So what are we gonna do with all these people, and what are we gonna do financially? Are we gonna help them out with stimulus money or something else, or increase taxes to subsidize it? I have no idea. You let me know. And if you have any questions, like always, let me know in the comments below.